Rev up your engines. All right, today I have an interesting car that most people don't know anything about. It's called a Chrysler Crossfire, but in reality, it's pretty much a Mercedes SLK. It was assembled by the Harman company in Germany, basically putting together SLKs, calling them Chrysler Crossfires. Mercedes-Benz owned Chryslers. It was Daimler Chrysler. They were thinking they were going to push their cars at the Chrysler dealers. Now, in hindsight, we can see that whole idea was a dismal failure, but this car actually isn't a dismal failure. He paid 10 grand for it when it was 10 years old. You know what he's done to it? Not much at all. Under the hood, it's got a Mercedes V6 engine. He drove it here from Virginia and he got 30 miles a gallon on the highway. For a zippy little car like this, it's pretty good gas mileage. Now, it still has the original transmission. That shifts good. It's a classic two-seater sports car. It's got an engine in the front, transmission in the middle, and rear-wheel drive. Your 20-year-old seat, yeah, this is coming apart. He needs to get seat covers for it. It's not leather, it's fabric, and it's just walking in and out. And, of course, there is no back seat. It's a two-seater. Now, as I said, these were put together by the Harman company in Germany, and you probably heard of the Harman Ghia, the old Volkswagen, right? It was the same company. They assembled those. They assembled these, and when they stopped making these, soon after, the company didn't exist anymore. It went bankrupt. Now, these are actually not bad cars. The precursor for this in Chrysler, as you can see up there, is the dreaded Chrysler TC by Maserati. I voted it as the worst car in the world ever made. They were rolling piles of junk. This car is probably 500 times better than those piles of junk. These are real cars. They're Mercedes SLKs, right? But since it says Chrysler Crossfire, he got this thing with 50,000 miles on it for 10 grand, right? You're not going to get Mercedes for that price because they have the name, you know what I mean? If you really wanted to go wild, you could take all the emblems off and glue Mercedes emblems on, and only a real person who knows what they look like on the back would realize what it was. Most people would just think it was a Mercedes because basically it is a Mercedes. They were building them pretty good. Super strong engine with timing chain. And yeah, like any German car, they got a lot of plastic stuff that eventually it's going to break, but hey, the stuff's still in pretty good shape. The usual plastic headlamps, you can polish the heck out of those, make them shiny again. Virginia, so shouldn't have much rust, which it doesn't. You're not going to see that in Virginia. Now, I did have a customer buy one of these when I was in Houston, and he made the mistake of buying it from Florida, and it wasn't Central Florida, it was on the beach. Guy at a beach house. When I jacked it up, when he drove it back to Houston from Florida, I said, why did you buy that car? The metal just crunched. The thing was totally rotten away. So if you're gonna buy one of these used, see what area it came from and check the undercarriage. Like Virginia, Texas, New Mexico, whatever. You're not gonna have any rust, you're not gonna have any problems with it. But you gotta watch it if it's a salted area, because the bodies will rot away on these things. This case, no, it was in Virginia, so you didn't have to worry about it. You got a sporty little car like this for 10 grand, and then years and years later, and many miles later, hey, still in pretty good shape, you know? But we're gonna test it out with the old computer to see exactly what's happening inside. Now we got our Autel scan tool. It's got a regular plug up here, and so we'll turn it on, and it already knows what the vehicle is. That's how fast it is. And it's already read the VIN number. Now it's decoding the VIN number for Crossfire. Do a full fault scan of the whole car. Here we go. Scanning. You can say it's a 6-speed standard tranny, which means it's going to be pretty quick. You can see presently got 125,000 miles on it. Sound system. Now it's got 12 codes. 10 of them are the stability. The instrument cluster says no CAN communication with PCM for the instrument cluster. These things often get a little bit on the squirrely side. We'll go to the trouble code. No CAN communication, right? And we'll erase the code. You'll often get communication codes in these things as they age. The electronic stability program has a whole bunch of codes. You're not really going to expect an electronic stability program to work on a car that's 20 years old. Back in the days, those are relatively basic systems anyway, but don't depend on it. You got to drive these things. They're not going to drive themselves for once. It's a standard transmission too. You got to do all that stuff yourself. In the lateral acceleration sensor circuit, there's some kind of problem. So we'll start her up now. Feel that powerful engine? And what we're going to do is we'll look at the main live data, the engine control module data. It's loading the info, We'll look at live data. I mean, there's going to be a lot of data on this thing. MAP sensor's good. Battery voltage is good with it running. Oil temperature. Even the PCV duty cycle. Gives you the knock sensor data. Even a knocking angle of all 6 cylinders. Cylinders have no fault counts. Lost gas temperature. It's all normal on a catalytic converter. This thing is still running like a clock. The engine doesn't burn oil. It's a manual transmission, so you have to deal with all that complex automatic transmission stuff. Seems like it's going to be a fun car to drive, so let's take it for a spin. Now, it's very smooth, even though it's 20 years old, but it's a relatively low car, so we're going to creep over the giant bump here. We don't want to grab anything. There, okay, here we go. Real smooth shift. Now, it is a relatively short wheelbase. It's a 2-seat roadster, so I don't expect miracles on the ride, and I can feel the bumps. Some of it, of course, it's a 20-year-old car. It's still got the original struts on it. Yeah, if you wanted to drive it seriously, you'd have to replace it. I personally would put Bilsteins on them. Here we go to the little stop sign, and people are all here. Even though it's early in the morning. Here we go. Give it some gas. Thing's got power, there's no arguing it. It gets up and goes. It may be a V6 engine, but it's pretty torquey. Although I do have to say, I felt the strut bouncing around in the front. I would replace the front struts on this thing. Give it a better ride and it won't be doing that clunking. Plenty of power when you're taking off. And it looks like this is going to stay green for a while, so nice smooth acceleration. This baby takes off very smooth. And when you consider if you don't drive like this, hey, you got 30 miles a gallon driving it on the highway. Kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? It really is a Mercedes SLK for all intents and purposes. And other than it needs front struts, it still runs like a dream, doesn't burn any oil. And $10,000 years ago, and it still runs like this? Hey, you can find a low mileage one. Hey, they don't make them anymore. They're only going to go up in value as time goes on. And you don't have to worry about parts. It's not really a Chrysler, it's a Mercedes. They always make parts for these things. Just realize that when it does need parts, it's going to be pretty expensive. But the most expensive things on the SLKs are the transmissions. But the most of them are automatics. This is a standard. It'll last forever. So, fun little car, nice looking car, even though it's old. What a surprise. Now you know what a Chrysler Crossfire is. A Mercedes-Benz. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Sean Gallagher says, Scotty, are the new 2023 Toyota Priuses good cars? Well, they should be. They're new cars. I can never comment on a brand new car. Going by history, yes, but you never know until they've been out a while, right? If you want phenomenal gas mileage, I mean, those things do. And the thing about the 2023 was they upgraded them so they get a little bit better gas mileage, but they have like tons more horsepower. They're much faster than they used to be. If you want a car like that and you understand the negative aspects of if you own a hybrid car like that and you want to drive 400,000 miles, you're going to have some gigantic repair bills down on the other end. Changing a generator on one of those things is like a $6,000-$7,000 job. Changing an alternator on a regular car is like a $300-$400 job. And a $200 job if you do it yourself. So keep that in mind when you want to know what good is. Ex-Calhoun says, Scotty, what do you think of the new Broncos? Alrighty, well, there's actually two sets, right? There's the cheap ones that are made in Mexico that are crap. And then there's the better ones with V6 engines that are made in Michigan. But the problem was, they ate valves. The valves were made wrong, and the engines blew up. All I gotta say, you make a new thing like that, Bronco for Ford, bring back an old name, and the engines explode because the valves are bad. Ford didn't make those valves. They got them from some factory. They farmed out the valves for their engines. Henry used to make all the parts. Then if he had a problem, he had nobody to blame but himself, and he could fix it, right? So, that's all I got to say about that. Jason, he says, Scotty, I got a 2014 Chevy Malibu. 4-cylinder, 96K. Occasional rough shifts at low speed. Should I change the tranny fluid or try something else? Okay, well, you got 96,000 miles. I would say change the fluid and filter and pray. Because the weakest thing on that car with a 4-cylinder is their automatic transmissions. They're not very well made. They're relatively complex and they're not made all that well. Try that and pray. Because if it doesn't fix it and ends up going out, you're going to find out the money it costs to fix one of those automatic transmissions. You would have wished you'd bought a Toyota or a Honda where they'll go 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 miles and not start falling apart when they got 96,000 miles on it. Sal 25 says, should I change my wheel bearings? I got 2011 Honda Accord, 73,000 kilometers on it. I hear a humming noise. Mechanic said, it's fine, you can change it later. So what do you think I should do? You got 73,000 kilometers, so that's like, what, 40,000 miles? That's not much. And you hear the noise, what the heck? If they look at it, they jack it up, there's no play, keep driving it. I've had people drive them years that way. And realize this, it might not be your wheel bearings. It could be the tires. More often with a Honda, with that low mileage, it's the tires making the noise. Let's look at your tires. If they're worn by a set of tires, as the noise goes away, hey, that's what it was. It often is. Now, the only time I've ever seen wheel bearings go out on a Honda that low was if they were in big wrecks or if people kept hitting the curbs, because when you hit the curbs, that bends them and then the wheel bearings go bad. If you whack curbs or somebody you know who drives your car whacks curbs, yes, that will ruin the wheel bearings. If it doesn't have any play and you just hear a little noise, you can sometimes go years that way. It'll make a hellacious racket long before it starts to get physically worn. Now, all you can do is jack it up, pull on the wheel, and start going clunk, clunk, it's worn, it's time to change it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.